I posed a whole raft of questions in last week's Ease In relation to planning, the need for it, how it should be done, how we should set our goals and how we should go about achieving them, and how our goals should facilitate us living in a manner that is effortless, happy and successful, rather than the normal way in which people tend to live down to their expectations because of the way in which they have been conditioned as ordinary, normally minded people. So this is the first of a few videos. How many, I'm not sure at this stage, because in part it depends on your own feedback. But what I want to talk about a little this morning is the problem with traditional planning and goal setting. And I want to look at it first of all this week from a business perspective, because we are at a time of the year when businesses will be planning next year's budgets, next year's targets, and businesses will be geeing themselves up to meet what businesses often describe as challenging targets. Well, isn't it great to get out of bed and have a challenging target? Unfortunately, if you look at most businesses, almost all businesses, so-called challenging targets, you will find that what they've done is they've taken this year's performance, which could be abysmal, and added a lump to it. In other words, they've started on the basis of the normal performance they are achieving at the moment. And that normal performance, whilst it might appear to be successful in comparison to, say, their competitors, is successful in comparison to another load of headless chickens who don't know how to run their businesses because, being normally minded, they're all over the place. And when they get together as a management team, not only are they all over the place, they're all over the place together. It's very little wonder that research in the field of team dynamics would suggest that at a minimum 80% of leadership teams are dysfunctional. I read somewhere else recently, but it was a survey rather than research, that 99% of management teams are dysfunctional. Having worked with management teams for the bones of 25 years, I suspect that is an understatement. Why? Because if almost everybody is normally minded, then it should come as no surprise when you get 6 or 8 normally minded people in a room that actually what you have is madness. Somebody, having put them in that room, should lock them in and throw the key away. But I digress. Essentially what I'm saying is businesses tend to set what might be described as organic growth targets. We have X this year, we're going to do X plus 10%, or let's be challenging, X plus 15% next year. Whereas X may simply not be what they could be capable of doing at all. The problem is that we tend to see the world from within the box that we had constructed for us. So we didn't construct for ourselves, that others constructed for us during our formative years. Our formative years, generally speaking, would be our early years, but they would also include, by way of the stored knowledge we take in on board, the expertise that we learned in terms of how the world works and how business works. So in other words, say for example I'm an accountant, actually I'm an accountant, but I'm on tablets and I'm told I'll get over it. Say if I'm an accountant and I've learned how to target and I've learned how to do my spreadsheets and I've learned how to do my management accounts, I will have an impression of that is how the world actually works. And I will go about setting my targets, my objectives and my business plans on the basis of the norms that I know in relation to how the world works. I will work from inside a box that actually does not exist. And that is the first big problem with traditional business planning. It is based on a fallacy. It is based on a so-called reality that is actually only constructed by people living from their own versions of reality, that has nothing to do with what is actually possible if one put one's mind to it. Now, I think you know that that is a loaded statement, and that is why we have this series of videos and articles over the next few weeks, because we need to know what putting one's mind to it actually means. So we'll follow up next week in terms of looking at how we set our personal goals and objectives, how we plan from a personal perspective. Talk more next week.